Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to announce the next lecture. We're going to be briefed about mobile phone call encryption by Lee Honeywell, the asterisk guru, and Paul Wouters, the VPN expert. Well, basically what they're going to talk us about is we all care about encryption when it comes to transferring our normal data, but when it comes to telephone calls, everything goes out in the more or less clear. Of course, there are crypto phones created by some companies using proprietary algorithms, not interoperable, you know the problems. And they have managed to build up their own system using open standards such as SIP for the voice communication and IPsec, L2TP and OpenVPN for crypto. And you have it. Enjoy.
Is this working? Excellent. All right, so we're going to talk to you, as you said, about mobile call encryption, basically voice over IP and IPsec on various mobile networks. So the slides are yours to copy. Enjoy. We just have to give credit to the lovely slide design by Michael. I'm not going to try and mispronounce that. And overall, we're going to go over the goal and design for what we were doing here. How to build a secure PBX, as much of an oxymoron as that may be, building a secure phone, and the trials and tribulations of hacking on Linux phones. And then we'll have a question and answer, and tomorrow we're going to be doing, is it 2-hour workshop? 1 hour? It's 1 hour. 1 hour, hour and a half, who knows, workshop about the different stuff we go. We're not really doing, there's no config files in this entire talk, so we'll be doing all that stuff tomorrow. So we start with the problems of current mobile phones. As our introducer there said, we try and do encryption on any sort of, anytime we're using a public AP, anytime that we are concerned about the possibility of somebody accessing our data connections, and then we have important personal conversations over a cell phone network that is basically in the clear for all intents and purposes. I'll get a little bit more into the, how much the PSTN is also in the clear, but the cell phone networks in particular are pretty interceptable. You have stuff like lawful interception in the States, it's CALIA. In Canada, it's whatever the RCMP wants to do. I don't know what the different laws are over here, but basically any telco that has public telephone numbers has to be able to give access to law enforcement to be able to intercept all of the phone calls that goes through their network.
And the person just sitting there quietly in the corner is the one who broke the GSM encryption, so he can tell you why it's all plain text, really.
Yeah. So Paul has done some work on how secure the Dutch tapping rooms are. It's one thing to have a tapping room that has access to all of the country's telecom infrastructure. It's another thing when once you've set up that tapping room, you don't control access to it properly. So I think we've got some links at the end to that, or we'll put some in the slides in the final version. I don't know how many of you have heard about the SIM card cloning issue, but there's a telecom magnate in Canada named Ted Rogers who runs Rogers Communications, which is our unfortunately only GSM provider. And someone cloned his SIM card and was running up $50,000 a month bills on a cloned SIM card because Rogers roaming rates are something else. And because the card was cloned and Ted didn't want to give up his phone number, and they just sort of let it slide. There's been a couple of issues too where people have had their cards cloned and their accounts haven't been turned off, and the accusation against the mobile providers is that they base whether or not they cut off your cloned SIM card on your credit history. So if somebody runs up $100,000 in roaming charges on a cloned SIM of yours and you have a really good credit history, they'd rather take your home than cut off your GSM access. So that the SIM card cloning thing is a pretty big problem right now. The price of GSM towers and scanners and other tools for intercepting GSM conversations as basically clear as Paul was saying, sorry, I didn't catch his name. Lucky has cracked GSM. It's not a particularly strong encryption standard anymore, and stuff like setting up rogue towers is going to be an increasing problem, but 10 years ago, the equipment to intercept a GSM conversation was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then it dropped to the $50,000 range, and now it's under 10. So if you have a reason for wanting that kind of equipment, you can get it, and it's not unobtainable anymore. Then there's the question of what backdoors or vulnerabilities are in our phones. You were saying that the Dutch spy agencies don't think that the BlackBerry is secure enough. There was a couple of BlackBerry exploits published at Black Hat last summer, or was it DEF CON? And then we'll get into the whole Linux phone thing shortly. But and then there's just the question of price, like 15 cents an SMS. I don't know how much the rates are around the world, but I mean, for me to use SMS on a roaming connection from Canada over here is getting towards $1 Canadian a message, and it's ridiculous. So.
And it's also now that I'm like, just give me a show of hands. Who's now using more than one SIM because they're not in the country where they normally live? So that's not too bad. Okay, so I'm now carrying like 4 SIMs, and I'm getting really tired of that too.
Just for comparison, who's here in a country that they don't normally live? So about a quarter of the raised hands have a different SIM card, which is like, that's ludicrous. There used to be, in Canada, there used to be two GSM providers, and the one smaller provider had peering agreements arranged with all sorts of carriers around the world. So were I to go to the States and use my Fido GSM phone, it was 25 cents a minute to roam. Like, that was fantastic. And then I had the unfortunate experience at DEF CON this summer of getting a $150 phone bill because when Fido got purchased by the larger GSM carrier, Rogers, they jacked up all the prices to over $1 a minute. So lack of competition, you know how that goes. So we've got the standard GSM cell phone connection. You go from your phone to the tower, through the cloud, to another tower, to another GSM phone. What happens in that cloud? Your guess is as good as mine. And like by guess, I mean we know that lawful access is enforced. If you're in a country whose infrastructure you don't know about, there could be all sorts of other stuff going on, whether it was industrial espionage, other kinds of government espionage. There's all sorts of considerations as to what's going on in that telco cloud. This is just for a voice call. As to what's happening if there's a data call, we've got all sorts of different potential proxies and servers that your call, whether it's voice or that your data call could be going through, whether it's a BlackBerry Enterprise server, some sort of proxy server. A number of CDMA providers, in particular in North America, tend to not like giving out public IP space. So you need to ask for, they call it a VPN compatible data connection, which really means they give you a public IP address. So, which is why you basically can't do a proper data connection on a couple of the providers in Canada. Like, you just don't get you're just going through a proxy for the entire connection. And these are all points of vulnerability for your conversation that you have no idea what's being done with your voice or your data. So our goal with this project, and we'll go into how much we achieved and didn't achieve of it later on, but the goal was to build a secure private communication infrastructure that can be used in untrusted hostile networks, whether it's telco or internet, because we do talk about voice over Wi-Fi in a bit, without losing any functionality compared to using a mobile phone or laptop. We wanted to use only trusted open source software, and we wanted to move the trusted aspect of the communication into the software we controlled, as in the open source software we were using, since we can't really trust the hardware, whether it's our snazzy Linux phone here or your Windows Mobile PDA phone or any of that. We're looking at a future where everybody's going to have a cell phone, whether it's their one laptop per child laptop that's going to have a GSM connection in it or whatever the next generation is. And these are design considerations for that communications infrastructure that people are going to be deploying in the future. So what can we trust? Not a whole lot out of what we've gone over so far. You can't trust your voice call, whether it's a GSM call or whether it's a landline call. I mean, I'm sure that most of you know that it's as simple to tap a landline call as it is to walk up to somebody's house and clamp on with a butt set and listen to their conversation. Or, you know, if they've got an old cordless phone and they're talking over that. Baby monitors, like how well that works. We can't trust our mobile phones because we have this infrastructure that I've gone over is like not, you know, you don't know what's going on in the cloud. There's also a number of questions with mobile phones over whether or not whether or not somebody like a telco could turn on the microphone in your cell phone remotely without you being able to control it, and whether or not you'd be able to detect that with something like those stickers that show when there's a GSM connection, or, you know, when you put your mobile phone by a speaker and it makes that beep 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 if it's a GSM phone. There's even situations where if that call is happening and that that secret call is happening and you're near enough to a tower that they've overpowered the tower, so they don't need to, they use a very, very low powered connection on your cell phone, you may not even be able to detect the fact that your phone is making an outgoing call without you knowing it. This is all conjecture, but it's all completely technologically feasible. The actual IP network that you're using on a GPRS, UMTS, or what was the other one? Anyway, the Edge, yeah, sorry, the GPRS, Edge, or UMTS connection, you can't trust whether it's going through a BES or like a proxy server, any sort of, you're on the cloud regardless. And then you have the question of proprietary phones. You don't know what's on your Windows mobile phone. And I mean, that's always been my concern with the CryptoPhone, is that it runs on Windows Mobile. I totally respect the CryptoPhone project. I think it's an amazing, amazing product, but it does run on Windows Mobile. And then we get into unknown and homebrew cryptography. You just don't want to go there. So who do we want to protect against? I've gone over a lot of this already. It's internet eavesdropping, telco eavesdropping, revealing location information. I was talking to one of the guys from the EFF yesterday who's working on something around this, but we didn't go into this at all. You know, you're on a cell phone. You know, within a couple of feet, they know where you are. What the best, cheapest method of communication is, if Wi-Fi or WiMAX is available, you want to use that. And if it's not, you drop to GPRS, Edge, UMTS, getting more expensive, in some places less so, in some places more so than others. In Canada, it's $100 for 100 megs. And that's the best you can get. You don't want to use untrusted third-party storage or relay services. There's a couple of encrypted VoIP services out there that have different, have untrusted relay services. I'm thinking of, was it Wango? I had some concern about the Wango project and relaying through, and of course Skype is the big example of that. Like, you have, it's closed source. They prevent you from even looking at the application through a debugger. There's nothing you can do there. And storage and relay services like SMS, BlackBerry servers, BES, commercial email services like the ones that the different cell phone providers offer, and their internet services. Do you have some more that you wanted to say there?
Well, everybody knows what happens when these services are either they can be mandatorily tappable by governments, or you can get like the Paris Hilton effect, where you can get her phone numbers and all her messages. So you really don't want to store this on anything that's not under your own control.
And then there's issues like spam and SPIT, SPIT being the unfortunate acronym for spam over IP telephony, or misconfigured that voice over misconfigured IP telephony is the other one. The acronym spells out vomit. These are, so we haven't so much gone into stuff like preventing unwanted calls and messages, but based on one of the potential designs that we've cooked up, that could actually be a nice little side effect of what we're doing, because we're preventing most calls, including all the unwanted ones. So infrastructure that we can't trust, the plain cell phone voice network,